The regular season is in the books. The Low Post podcast is back after a 2-week hiatus because we've been busy. I've had some shows, had some weddings. Shaine's been training to be the new head honcho over at the Rhode Island Top Golf because they changed the name. Danny's been doing his foot doctoring, his foot guy stuff. So we are back. Danny and Shaine, if you want to give a little what's up to everybody.
Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to take care of the feet. And if it's me, it's me.
There you go. What's going on, everyone? Good to be back. Good to talk my shit. Get ready.
Well, we used to censor this podcast, and then we had the week where Spence was on the podcast. And I think all of
that was one of my favorite. I mean, I said before, I think I said to you guys, the Gian episode was my favorite one that I've been a part of. That's my favorite one that I've listened to. And I've listened to this podcast since as long as we've been in the league, but that was just so entertaining.
That Spencer one was a good one. That was my favorite for multiple reasons. And then Joey made the mistake of saying, I try not to censor you guys unless it's really serious. You probably should have never said that to me, but I'm going to try and keep it in the lines. But if anything happens, it's on Joey. He said it.
I will say that was probably the best podcast we've done. Spence is awesome. He's been really fun to talk to this year and see him at games. He was getting Garen fired up on the bench, talking about his jet skis, talking about having girls on the jet skis with him and going all out. So Spence was a riot this past week, and we love having him. We're excited for our third matchup, which we'll get into at some point, because that's probably what we're going to talk about today is the playoff stuff. That's what's coming up. So we'll see that third time's the charm matchup against the Halfway Crooks. I will say the Duyes boys record in the playoffs against the Halfway Crooks, thanks to Shaine Patrick, is
no, it's 0-0. That's not true. The 15-point game from Shaine, that was against the Werewolves. He hit a dagger 3 against them in the regular season. We've never played them in the playoffs.
I'm pretty sure Shaine hit 5 threes against Halfway that game.
No, he hit the 5 threes against the Werewolves, and you can check me on that. He hit a late game go-ahead 3.
I know I hit the top of the key 3 against Halfway in the regular season.
Yeah, we've never played them in the playoffs. Because
my memory is really jogging, but Danny's usually spot on. I think he might be right with the Werewolves on that one.
Yeah. Oh no, it was Island Time round 1.
Because Brian was on the Werewolves.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I didn't have that game against Brian.
You definitely. I'm gonna go to the tape.
Go to the tape. I could be wrong.
My head, I was pretty convinced it was Halfway.
The only thing I remember about that Werewolves game is I took a really bad shot with like no shot clock left, and Brian tapped me on the head and said, "You're not thinking," and I was like, "This son of a bitch."
Yeah, here we go. We got it right here. I'm gonna share my screen.
I hate this. I hate that Danny's right about this. I swear it was Halfway.
Right.
Let me get rid of that if you can't see that.
Shaine Patrick, 18 points.
15, 5 for 12.
Damn, Shaine, you took 12 threes that game?
I guess so.
Kind of a low game from Brian that game, if you ever want to think about it.
Because I locked his ass up.
Yeah, Brian's not that good.
While I'm on the while I have my screen shared, I want to bring something up because I realized I didn't send out any spreads for week 8. And I know we've been getting away from recapping week 8 or like the week before. We leave that to the post-game show. But just to give you a look at like how I set the spreads. I've got a whole formula here where I do the math and I figure out offensive and defensive rating. I figure out pace and I come to a predicted final score. And from that, I give myself a rough estimate of what I think the spread is going to be. And I just want to highlight some of these scores here because I think there's only one game where it was bad. Let's not look at the final score. Let's look at margin of victory here. For Lob and Air Mambas, I said it was going to be I predicted it was going to be a 28-point margin of victory. What was it? A 28-point margin of victory. For Game Breakers and the Warriors, I predicted it was going to be about 11-point margin of victory. What was it? 10 points, but it was in the other direction. Yeah, I had predicted from the numbers it was going to be 10 points for Game Breakers. It ended up being 10 points for Warriors. For Halfway in the ice trays, that's about 12 points. What do they win by? 9 points. In a bucket. And then Duyes boys and Ball Don't Lie, that's a 14-point win, 13-point win for the Duyes boys. So I just want to shout myself out. These spreads, I forgot to send out the spreads at the beginning of the week. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But there's math that goes into this. So for everybody that clowns me about the spreads, we have a week where it did pretty well. So I just want to get off my soapbox.
We can make some money outside
Danny,
of like.
I think we'll talk about it off camera. I think there's a way.
We'll talk about this later, but
It's not a perfect science. Keep in mind, it is gambling. You are like, you're setting an imaginary line. So
I'm calling you for my March Madness bracket next year.
I tried doing math for it. It didn't work out.
So I think it's okay that we recap a little bit, because the regular season is kind of finished out, right? And now we know where everybody kind of sits in the standings, and the records don't matter, but I'd still believe that the standings do. And I think this week, everybody hates when we talk about ourselves, right? But they even said it on the post-game show. I think that there's one game coming up on Tuesday that has the potential to be an upset. And that would be the 4-5 game with the Duyes boys and the halfway crooks. Is it biased for us to say that? Maybe, but in reality, and we don't need to touch on them too much. I just don't necessarily see the Warriors losing to a ball don't lie. I don't see the Game Breakers losing to the Mambas, and I don't see Lob City losing to the Ice Trays. I think the best game of the week, whether or not it's going to even be an upset, just being unbiased here, that is going to be the best game of the week between the halfway crooks and the Duyes boys. What do you guys think about that?
Well, the 4-5 matchup, like the numbers are there, it's never really an upset, depending who. That's like the closest matchup, obviously. Right. So I wouldn't call it an upset either way. Technically, halfway is supposed to win. They've been the better team all year. But what I will say about us is we haven't showed up. We haven't had a full team most of this year. We've had some miscues. We've had some terrible shooting nights. We've had some great shooting nights. So it's just one of those things where if you know, if everything's clicking for us, I like our chances. I wouldn't necessarily call it an upset, though. Playoffs, anything can happen.
I think I'm looking at it, and I mean, definitely the last 2 weeks, you've had Brian and Des there, but I think last week, especially this last game, it was a terrible shooting night for everyone. And like you even said it a few weeks ago, like a month ago, maybe, that the Duyes boys, by the numbers, were the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And I think since then, it's been a real big slump. But it's definitely, I mean, you talked about it before we started recording, that without Des, you guys took a 5-point lead into the fourth quarter against the Rhode Island Warriors. You ended up losing in the fourth quarter because you didn't have the steam. But if you have just one of those guys, like a Des or a Brian, or both of them, and you guys are clicking, you guys are hitting shots, it's going to be a good game. And you have the benefit of having seen them twice this season already. So you kind of know what you're getting into. And it's also a matter of attendance, for sure. You don't know who's going to show up. You don't know what matchup you're going to have, but you do have the benefit of having seen this team twice already.
Also, to light a fire under this person's ass, and I know he's going to love to hear this, is Kyle Wolf last week, who put on a clinic finally. And I don't say finally as if he never done it or couldn't do it. I've known Kyle for a long time. He can definitely hoop. If you get that game from him, and I know he can give it again, I think we're having the conversation next week of we were the better team all along this season, and we just didn't have the pieces in place to do so. So Kyle Wolf being a sleeper of this upcoming week, I will say, if he can give us 20 points, I know he had 25, he led the team with 25. If he can do that again and lock down, if he can channel his inner Shaine like I saw, and he can talk that shit, and he can bump a little bit, we're talking about a very different game between us and halfway than what we've seen in the regular season.
Yeah, and to get to that point, right, I think in a lot of these games, there's going to be somebody that in the playoffs, there's guys that always have to step up, right? Not the stars, because the stars do their thing. So everyone views our team as the stars of being Des and Brian, which is absolutely correct in doing that. I don't think anybody would argue that. I think it's going to be those third and fourth guys, right? So for us, looking at this matchup is, if you have an X factor, such as a Kyle Wolf step up, okay, that changes the game a lot. But then I think another person that I really need to see a huge game from is going to be Lucas. And the fact that we saw Lucas against a decent Air Mambas team. I mean, they're not it's not like they don't play defense. Dropped 42, which against any opponent is not easy to do. They weren't letting him walk to the rim. He hit most of everything from three. And he was getting some good shots underneath the hoop. So I think if you can have a game where everybody's clicking, like you got Des and Brian doing their thing, getting you that 15 to 20 points each, but then you have guys like Lucas and Wolfie stepping up and doing what they can do and having their best game, then it becomes very interesting because, at that point, you have four guys that are able to contribute in the box score significantly. And then I think you need a good game off the bench from a guy like Corey, who we know can shoot the ball really well. I think for the Duyer's boys this week, the big thing is going to be the defensive matchup. I think, 2 seasons ago when we were in the finals against Lob and we didn't have Johnny Coutu and Vinny Volpe, right? I would argue that was probably the best game out of Nate Kirschenbaum that you're ever going to get, defensively and offensively. And I think that he needs to have some semblance of that defensive intensity, because if you remember, you guys were both there. I don't know if Danny was there. I know Shaine was there. His defensive presence in that game helped us stay within 1 point until halfway through the fourth quarter.
I will cut Nate some slack. It's tough. He had to step into a role I don't think he was ready for this season. I took an unexpected leave, and Nate's a big guy. It's tough to move up and down the court in general, never mind being that size. So I'll cut him some slack. But even if he has to hang back on defense, he doesn't have to truck down the court. He's not the first, second, third option to get the basket. So if he just sits back on defense and kind of plays that half court game and can just stay ready and hands up and not jump and not fall. Yeah, I know he said he got some bad whistles the last couple of weeks. Like you said, not your key guys, but your role guys doing what they need to do, especially in the playoffs where it's the most important. So yeah, if you can get Nate to stay winded, I think we're onto something defensively.
Yeah, I think those are your three guys that you need to really step up. It's going to be Nate, Lucas, and Wolfie. And we know Wolfie can do it. And I think that what's nice is he draws everybody's third best defender. And so if he's able to kind of exploit that, I think he can have a really big game. And if you get a 25-point outburst from Wolfie, it's going to be a really good game. Whoa, really good game for the Duyer's boys. Sorry, it was a tongue twister. I feel like I was having a stroke.
I'm going to light another fire, hopefully, and I keep it even. I talk my shit about everyone. Lucas, if you're listening, bro, I've had you on a milk carton since about week 3. You've been missing for me. So I know you can hoop. I've saw it week 1. And PJ's had some great things to say about you. I don't need 40. I'm asking for 20. That's no slight. I know you can hoop. So just come. I want to take you off the milk carton. I don't want you missing no more. I want that outburst that I saw week 1 that had me screaming, hooting, and hollering. So I want to be yelling from my hotel room on Tuesday. That Lucas had a game quite similar to week 1.
And, I want to kind of touch on the other side of the matchup because, we always love hyping up the Duyer's boys where we need to hype them up. But, there's another team that has to show up. And we've talked before, it's been kind of a consistent thing that the halfway crooks have a lot of mouths to feed. And in the last couple of weeks, you've had the issue of some of your mouths aren't coming to the table. I think Jeff Winchell's missed two of their last 3 games. Taj hasn't been there for their last 2 games. And I think Joey even said on the post-game show that he won't be there for the matchup next week.
Huge. He's not.
And the other thing that I think is funny is that Dom Langston said that he doesn't drive 2.5 hours to have Joey just play the game and not shoot the ball. And in the playoffs, when the rotation's kind of thin a little bit, maybe Joey gets a little less playing time. He's not going to shoot the ball as much. Maybe does Dom Langston want to make the 2.5 hour drive?
Trouble in paradise? Do we have some trouble in paradise there?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, regardless, it's a matter of you still have plenty of good pieces. You have Spence that knows how to play well against the Duyer's boys. You have Devin Devon Pina, who I believe he was player of the week against the Duyer's boys last week. He's got plenty of experience against this team. it's a matter of like both sides have to make ends meet, and both sides need to have everything kind of come together, because this is arguably their most important game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and about game importance, right? We talked about what the most important game for every team was this year, and we said that the Duyes boys against the Ice Trays was the biggest game of the year for both teams. We ended up winning that game in overtime, but it ended up shaking out that way, that based on the schedule and the matchups, that we were pretty spot on with that. So if we lose that game, we flip down to the 6th seed, and all of a sudden we're facing a Lob City team who, although we're very familiar with them, I think would be a little bit more of a struggle for us size-wise. So, that game ended up really being super, super important for us. Unfortunately, it was super important for the Ice Trades as well, but they now have to play Lob City. And I do want to talk about those games because it is going to be the week of the underdog, right? That's what everyone wants. That's the story that everybody wants. So to talk about these underdog teams, right? What does every lower seeded team in these matchups, which guys, game plan, what do they have to do in order to be able to win a game? Because we've seen it done. We saw when we beat an undefeated Boom team with Jose, right? Nobody expected that. I don't even know if we expected that to happen.
Bags were
that?
packed. Bags were packed. I was out the gym door.
You know what I'm saying? So what do all these teams have to do? So let's touch on Ball Don't Lie first, right? We saw Ellis have a gigantic game, whether or not they didn't win a game all year. Hitting 10 of 11 threes is no short of an incredible feat, right? Regardless if you're on 10 feet, 8.5 foot, whatever you want to call it, whoever you're playing. What does Ball Don't Lie have to do in order to keep this game within reach of the Warriors, and what could they, if anything, do to win this game?
They
Play
need
defense.
I think we're going to say the same thing, but they need defense, and they need someone else. They have Finkel as Einhorn, and that's what I think I'm going to call him for the rest of his life now. But there's no one, I don't know anyone else in that team. Granted, I haven't been around to watch, but there isn't anything I've seen from highlights or like stats that oh, there's that guy, there's their number 2. It's always been Einhorn, who's shooting the lights out and shot 10 for 11 last week against us. And that's it. They've kind of lived on a prayer, kind of like we have from 3, but their defense is just not there. You can walk to the rim and that's that. So they need someone else to step up, because one person, as we know, we say it all the time, every week, ISO ball ain't going to get it done, especially in this league. So they need defense, and they need at least a number 2 to step up and get some buckets.
And I think I put it on the Twitter that Duyes boys Crooks was the only 3rd-time matchup of the first round of the playoffs. I misspoke, and Joey called me out on it. Rhode Island Warriors and Ball Don't Lie is also a 3rd-time matchup. They met in week 2 and week 7 as well. And I think their first matchup, I think I have it here, they lost by 19, their first matchup against the Warriors. And then their second matchup against the Warriors, they lost by 38. So, they went on a stretch where they were losing by a lot, several weeks in a row. And I hate to say that a 13-point loss this past week is a step in the right direction, but it kind of is. So it's like a matter of be ready to fire on all cylinders, be ready to hit your shots.
Wait, did you say they lost by 13 the first week, and then 38?
No, they lost by 13 this past week. So
they are going in the right direction then.
Yeah, they're trending up. They're still losing, but by less.
They're losing better than what they started off doing. Okay.
Yeah. So you just got to hope. It's the same thing. I'll reiterate it. It's just you hope that you can hit shots, try to play a little bit of defense, and I'll add to it, maybe hope 1 or 2 guys can't show up for the first round, and they're fine with that because they're the 1 seed.
And like I said, I think I said it in the second week of doing this podcast, where this happens to one new team at least every year, where they do not win, but they do figure it out more towards the end of the season. And then they come back next year, and then they get 2, 3, they rattle off some wins, and they're clearly better because they adjusted, they figured out what they needed. So I hope that's the case with Ball Don't Lie, where you want to see teams come back and they don't want to be just absolutely depressed that they didn't win a game. I can't really relate, but you've seen the trend, like the Air Mamas, I think a few years ago, winless, but they came back, put some pieces in the right place, won some games. So you just hope that's the case with Ball Don't Lie, where You don't see them getting out of the first round. Obviously, if they do, props to them. But you hope to see them back next year and kind of making that push.
I think
And
a really. Oh, go ahead, Danny. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other good thing that they have on their side as one of those like relatively inexperienced and bottom end teams is you have a guy like Ellis that can be kind of a leader and an experienced veteran for you because he's played, this is his third season. And his first season, he went to the semifinals with the Swish Kebabs. And then in his second season with Ball Don't Lie, they got out of the first round at least. I think it was the quarterfinals or the semifinals, whatever it would end up being. Because we had 10 teams back then. So probably the quarterfinals. But he has experience winning in the playoffs. So it's a good thing to bring that experience and kind of bring that energy to the team.
It is a good front. PJ. We got PJ.
Yeah. You need a good GM, which I think I've solidified my spot in the Legacy Leagues Hall of Fame in that manner. But I think a big thing that if I'm Ball Don't Lie that I'm looking at is in the playoffs, right? A lot of the time, very, very good players can get hot for one game and win you a game. And so if I'm them, I'm riding Ellis right now. Last week, he probably had the best game of his life. I'm riding him. Pause. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're giving him the ball, you're letting him take 33s. It doesn't matter. You have nothing to lose. And I think, unfortunately for the Warriors, the scariest possible thing that you can have happen to you is you're going up against a team that has absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain this week. And that's always tough. I don't foresee the Warriors letting this game slip away from them, but there are bright spots. We saw the Bogey Kicks, who didn't win a game, beat the Ozone Boys last year in the first round. As much as we don't like them, as much as we hate them. Sorry, David the Peanut.
The Ozone Boys, they were short they were short a couple people. The Hogan sisters weren't.
The Hogan sisters.
The Hogan sisters, they didn't have Isom. They had I actually came across that picture today. It's one of my favorites you guys did where I was holding him when I was holding Carter, but you put his face on Carter's body. Absolutely hysterical, by the way. But yeah, they was missing some people. So not to degrade it at all.
I think there's always a chance in the playoffs, especially with a third time matchup. I mean, you see a team enough times, you can learn some things about them. We saw that happen to us last year. We walked to the semifinals against the Werewolves. I don't think we had a game that was closer than 20 points all year. And then the Werewolves got us. And that was probably our 8th matchup against the Werewolves in the last couple of seasons. So they've seen us when things like that happen, when you see a team multiple times. That's one thing that the boys have in their favor this week. That's one thing that Ball Don't Lie has in their favor this week, is that you're getting a team that you have seen now multiple times, and there's a chance to exploit some stuff there. And I think if they can take advantage of that, they'll keep it close. I don't know how much they'll be able to give themselves a chance to win, but you can't count them out. I mean, we've seen it happen before. So to get to the next one, the Ice Trays in Lob City. This one, I as much as the Ice Trays are on the right track, they're on the upswing. Nick Lemoyne's playing out of his mind. I don't know, with the experience of Lob City and their talent, I just don't know if there's a reality for that game to be an upset. But what can we say that they can do? Because they are absolutely on the right track this year in these last couple games to make a push. I mean, they had a great game against Halfway this past week, but what can they do collectively outside of Nick Lemoyne to make this a game and make it really competitive?
I mean, what I think is going to be interesting and make it a little, make you wonder how things are going to go a little bit in these playoffs is, Joey was talking about it. Carl Lee, I think he set his sideline with an injury. Greg Holt did not meet enough eligible games to be eligible for the playoffs. I think they are getting Vic for the playoffs. I think he did end up showing up enough, but they are going to be down a few guys that have that playoff experience, that have some of that explosiveness. So not to discredit, because we talked about they're a very experienced, very seasoned team, but they ran into the problem where when some guys didn't show up against the Game Breakers, their last game, it was even more convincing of a win than week 2 was. So I think it's going to play a little tighter, hopefully, because the Ice Trays have been on the come up as of late. it's still going to be a like play through your supporting cast as well and hope that Nick Lemoyne continues the trend he's been on.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow that, they can't win, but I have a hard time seeing Lob lose, and the only way I do is if, like we already said, if they don't show up, that's where all their problems come. And then still, if you can get like 2 out of the 5 guys that they do have that they need, Jose and Colin, it's even still tough to see them losing because you have Nuri who can just patrol the paint, and then you have Cody who we know what he can do from 3. So if they spread the floor like we know they can, it's tough to see the Ice Trays winning the game. But like we've also said, anything can happen any day of the week. What we know is let Jose shoot from 3. We know that for a fact. So maybe give him some space, let him just rattle the rim a little bit. Kid can definitely get to the rim, so keep him away from it. That's their name is Lob City. Keep them away from the rim. Don't play up-tempo basketball. It's the most stupid. I laugh when people play high speed against Lob City because that is their game. That's literally what they named their team about. They play at the rim. They're fast. They're moving. So if I can give them any word of advice is don't play fast. Do not try to play their game. Slow it down. There's no shot clock. Milk the game. Slow it down. Make them shoot threes. And on the other end, they have to hit their threes. They have to hit their shots. But don't try to make this a Golden State Warriors game where you run up the court, 2 passes, bang, shoot, and they're gonna outlet up the court, alley-oop. So you got to stay away from that up-tempo basketball.
So I sent this picture to Gian, and if I can figure out how to get back to Zoom here, I will. I'm going to share this with you guys, and this isn't a knock on Jose. We know how good he is, but what'd you say?
It's my favorite picture. I know what's coming.
Yeah, so I said to Gian, and I said, I'm going to show this for the Ice Trays when they watch it on YouTube because they need to. This is a picture that was taken, sent in by one of our very own Vinny Volpe, and he said, if you want to know how to guard Jose and to win the game against Lob City, here's how you do it. So I'm going to share this picture for you guys that can see it. It's my favorite picture ever.
Shout out Man Bun Vin. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. Shout out Vin, shout out Bry, shout out Johnny. But they played the game right. Backs to Jose, keep him away from the rim, box him out, let him shoot. And I'm not saying he can't shoot. I've seen games where, yeah, he does light someone up, but his strength is at the rim. And I'm not going to speak on someone else's mental, but that gets in someone's head after a while. You can only leave a couple guys open and they're going to keep shooting and shoot effectively at one point or another. That does bother you as a upper level player, is where, damn, they don't respect my jumper. So you either keep taking it or you don't take it. And if you, like I said, if you take away that rim game, Lob may be in some trouble, but they have guys who can shoot, and you just have to keep the middle clogged and keep Jose out of it, because then that opens up guys like Cody, Colin. I know you said Greg's out. He's a pretty efficient shooter, or even Vic is, like I've always said, is the catalyst to Lob City, where if he kind of controls the tempo, you're in some trouble because he gets in and out, throws it right up and lobs it to Jose. So yeah, that's the key to that one for them, at least.
And the other thing I think is interesting is, I mean, we talked about how with the Warriors winning last week against the Game Breakers, how that impacted the playoff seeding. And we were saying how, I had said this to PJ earlier in the week, how it really makes, and I said it on the Twitter, it really makes the Game Breakers' path to the finals more difficult, because you have to face Lob before the finals. And Lob in the playoffs is a team that you really ideally want to save until the end, if you can, if you have that luxury. So it really throws things off for them, but I also think it threw things off for the Ice Trays, because if the Game Breakers had won that game against the Warriors, it would have been Game Breakers in the 1 seed, and then Lob and the Warriors would have been tied, but Lob has the tiebreaker. So Lob goes to 2, the Warriors go to 3. And now you have a first round matchup against the Warriors, which obviously, like, most teams are going to match up better against teams that are not named Lob City. So I think the way things fell, like, it's really unfortunate that they got that draw for the first round, but I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world. for the ice.
Not to jump ahead, but is that the matchup if they both win their respective games? Is Lob game breakers?
In the
Yes.
semis, yeah. That'd be the
And
two,
I said this earlier. I am excited to see that matchup with the playoffs because it got chippy at the end of that regular season game where 91, I think his name Anthony something, whatever.
Graziano.
Yes, he took the charge on Jose, and Jose did not like that. Because Jose maybe could have gotten hurt. It was like 4 seconds left. I enjoyed it because Jose's going up for absolute posters with 4 seconds left. So I really am going to enjoy being back, by the way, in person. So I'm going to say for that matchup.
We got to get to week.
Have
That's
we
why
gotten
I'm just going to be back
Are you
in person
playoff eligible?
just to watch. We might need some help. We might not have everyone. Who knows, Danny? God.
So I think there's ways that it can be done. Obviously, girls like Colin Burns and all those guys are going to do really well in whatever matchup they have. So it's going to be tough for the Ice Trays, but yes, that was a shot.
No, I'm like, I didn't know, like, if we were on the same page. You just ripped it right out of my book. I love that.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't learned, the league perspective, for whatever reason, on Shaine is that he's only there to be intimidating. If that's your league, I've heard that from a few people, by the way. I won't say who.
That I am intimidating, or I'm there to be intimidating.
You're only there for intimidation. That's been however, it works. And unfortunately for the rest of the league, it rubs off on us individually. So we saw Kyle Wolf get in everybody's face last week, and he's never done that.
Kyle Wolf hasn't done that in his whole life. And that's one of my dead boys. He never speaks up for himself. And he's very quiet. Like, he'll let people kind of get there. But I'm so happy to see that. He texted me like 1 a.m. He's like, I channeled my inner Shaine. And I was like, what the hell? 1 a.m. What are you talking about? And he sent me the video of him just like kind of getting that kid's chest. And I was so proud. And that's what, like, I'm proud of all of you that have like adopted that kind of mental where you can't let people walk on you. I don't care how many points you get or how not great you are at basketball. You can't let people disrespect you, because at the end of the day, then what are you here for? You like, this is your respect. This is your name. Also, I'm glad you said this. I'm hearing a lot of like random talk now that, of course, I'm not in the gym. A lot of people are getting like loose lips here, like calling people bitches and like getting wild. Guys, don't forget, like, there's next season, and I have a very long memory. So like, wrote it down in my notes of who said what to PJ, who said what to Kyle. I know no one's talking to Brian and Dez, but don't forget, the boogeyman's back at one point or another, and you're not going to like what I have to say or do, by the way. So shout out to Gian, who says that I throw my body around. Throwing around 270 is a lot to little guys like that. So
I'm not going to speak anything into existence, but just to give you a little glimpse of how podiatric medical school works. In my 4th year of education, we go on what we call clerkships, because we do a surgical residency for 3 years. So for our 4th year of school, we basically do 1 month long internships at hospitals that we might be interested in doing our residency at. And the chips could fall where they may. There are 2 programs in Rhode Island that I'm interested in looking at. And depending on how everything falls, maybe I could do a month during the summer of 2024 and maybe get a 4-game stretch in with the Duyes boys, if the hours are permitting.
Playoff Danny's different. Or like,
he is different.
Off a flight, Danny's different. I remember last year.
I said it the other night when you guys were talking about people you need to fill in. If you catch me in a guest spot, I'm good for at least 10.
I'll never forget. I outplayed Gino, and I was on the floor rolling around laughing because he was looking at Gino just like, I was like, Danny off a flight, just finger guns, unbelievable.
So yeah, I mean, you're saying you'll be back next year and you don't forget, but I mean, I think if we can make it happen, I'd love to see it.
I mean, I heard a comment, PJ holding someone's pocket, and I know that's kind of that's a jail term at the end of the day, basically calling someone a bitch. So we're going to see who's holding whose pockets at one point or another. And it's going to be fun. I can't elaborate too much because then that's where I get myself in trouble, but we're going to see who's holding pockets for sure.
See, it's nice. I've adopted the Shaine mentality because the first time I ever adopted the Shaine mentality was was directly against Jose when he called Danny out. And since then, I've subtly started to turn into Shaine a little bit and started to give it back to people. But it's nice. I know I got my boys in my back pocket, so that I don't really have to worry about too much. But it's fun, man. It's I like being on that side of things. And if anybody knows the guys in red, they know that they're gonna shit talk until there's no more ability to shit talk. So we'll be there from tip off to the end in your ear, but it's all fun and games until it's not fun and games anymore. So we'll see about the 3-5 record next year and see how much people want to talk next year, but that's okay. To get to the last game before we talk about something I actually do want to touch on that's going to involve us, of course, because everybody loves us so much. Let's talk about the Air Mambas and Game Breakers matchup. I don't think that there's really another. Again, it sounds shitty and biased that we're saying that this is the Halfway Crook Studios boys is the only game where I'd say there's a chance for either seed to win. But I don't foresee the Game Breakers blowing this game to the Air Mambas. Mario Valerio's having a great year, on track to probably win Most Improved Player if it's up to the interns. If it's not up to the interns, he probably won't. But that's for another day. Joey doesn't want us to talk about who he voted for, but. To that point, what can the Air Mambas do to beat, Charlie D'Amelio and Gian?
This is like you said, the Halfway and Doogie Boys are the closest matchup where it's not an upset either way. In my opinion, this is the second one. And it's not close, but this is the second one. Only because they have, once again, not going to butcher his name, G-Day. And they got Mario, where if you can get that 1-2 combination kind of going, and then you get at least someone else to give you 15 to 20, I feel like that's the running story with all these lower seeded teams. You're onto something. And it comes down to G-Day being a defensive monster, because I know Game Breakers live at, they're another team, they live at the rim. If I know David DePina, he is like a mid-range assassin. I don't think he takes many threes. He's always trying to find a way to get to the hoop. You obviously got Bandana. Yeah, no. Hachi's in a league of his own. I think that's someone who's going to go get his regardless. But
Charlie D'Amelio,
who can jump through the roof.
Yeah, Joseph.
Durag Bay is what I'm gonna call him for now. He's always jumping, and he does that on 10. So I'm not trying to slight him any bit, but if you can stop their momentum, and they're another team, they love the trash talk. I see John every week talking to the refs. He adopted his Shaine mentality too. I don't care what he says about me. He adopted that very quickly. But he always pointing at people when they get dunked on. If you can stop that momentum for them and deny them at the rim, make them shoot. I know John's probably one of the best bucket getters in the league. If you can stop them from putting on your head, hooting and hollering, you're onto something. So it comes down to G-Day staying out of foul trouble, protecting the rim, and then it comes down to the offensive end for them, making sure they get smart shots and just making sure they go in.
And I think another thing, because G-Day hasn't been there, I think the last 2 games, 2 or 3, I don't remember how many it was. But if he's there, as long as he's not hurt, I hope he's not hurt. If he's there, it adds another layer to their game. But another guy is Mark DaCosta. He's been at, let me see how many games he's been at in total. I'm going to pull up their numbers here. Here he is. He's been at 6 games. He started 2. He's shooting almost 50% from 3. He's got a better 3-point percentage than he does field goal percentage. So he's another guy that spreads them out a little bit and adds another layer to their game. And it's not like, I've always said, like, the Air Mambas are the 1 star away. I don't think he's necessarily the star away, but he's an added piece that makes them a little bit tougher to manage. So you got to hope that all of their guys that can at least contribute 10 points a game show up, and you see what you can get from there. You hope Mario's having a good shooting night. But a bit of trivia that I just thought of that I want to bring up to you guys. Week 8 was the first regular season loss that Gian has suffered since week 2 of last season. Who did that come at the hands of?
Is that a serious question?
It's stuck on my face. So if you're raising your hand, nobody's going to see it if they're watching the video.
I'm raising my hand because I know the
Okay,
answer.
Pete, would you like to answer the question?
I would like to answer the question. The answer to the question would be the championship Duyes boys. Championship winning Duyes boys. They didn't win that year, but former champion Duyes boys team.
Yeah. So, and I think that is, Shaine says that Gian adopted the Shaine mentality. I want to put in the head that that's the day that the switch flipped. That's going to be my head canon. That's going to be my story. We're a different look now. He's on a different look now, but he's still doing what he's doing. So I think that if he shows up and he's ready to have a game, then he's gonna.
You're saying I son someone else in the league, like I birthed another just monster. Is that like I did this to like Ozone a couple times, and now I'll take the credit for what I did to Gian. Apparently, this is his villain arc.
The Tyrod Taylor of trash talkers.
Who?
You open the door, Tyrod Taylor, the quarterback. He was always the starter. Yeah, he was always the starter, and then he would get injured, and whoever stepped up next to start always went off, and he never got the job back. It happened with Josh Allen. It happened with Justin Herbert.
Is this a slight to Shaine?
Listen, we're gonna ignore no. I consider myself the Draymond Green, and Gian could be Jordan Poole. Got sent to Washington. We were never on the same team, but he had got that mentality where he just went on his own, needed to get his own bucket, and was sick of hearing Draymond talk. And I know a lot of people are sick of being hearing talk. Listen, shut me up. I'm sick of hearing me talk. Prove me wrong. Everybody, prove me wrong. And then I'll shut up.
You know what? I'll add to your trivia. Do you know what play I think flipped Gian's mentality from where he didn't want to lose anymore? In that game?
Enlighten me.
Where he blocked.
Never mind.
Go ahead.
You can say it.
Where he blocked Vinny and it went right to Brian, and
I
think Brian he's on the rim and dunked the ball on him. That might have flipped the switch.
He had every excuse on why he didn't play that, but he did play that, and Brian just got up there. Brian had full head of steam. Obviously, no one was really in front of him besides for Gian. But yeah, that was that's like the record scratch. Let me explain to you how I got here type of thing, and that's tough. So that might have lit the fire too for Gian. So the loss and then that absolute poster dunk from my guy probably pissed him off.
So I've got to ask, because we've gone through every matchup now, at least for the first round. What do you think realistically is the lowest possible seed in these playoffs that could win a championship?
We're gonna sound like assholes saying this, and it's Shaine's gonna have the same answer that I have, and we're gonna be the biggest.
I'm not raising my hand. I'm telling you what seed. The 5th seed.
For those of you listening, Shaine is holding up a whole hand, which for most humans has 5 fingers on it. The 5 seed is the Duyes boys.
Who is it that doesn't have, is it Danny Green that doesn't have a finger?
No, Davis Bertans.
No, Danny Green doesn't have a finger.
He like a bike chain, something like that. Was that, how did he do that?
Danny
The rim.
Danny Green was wearing his mom's wedding ring when he was a little kid playing basketball. Don't know why. Playing basketball outside, dunked when he was like 14, and the ring got caught on the rim and pulled his finger off.
Yep. Danny Green got torn.
I just checked. It's not Danny Green. It's Gerald Green.
Gerald Green.
Gerald Green was living at the rim. Yeah.
Gerald Green, 2K14 legend.
The best player in that game, I promise you, is Gerald Green.
Speaking of 2K, this is going to be beautiful. Shaine, I'm pretty sure you play as well, right? Danny and I play 2K with it. It's cross-platform this year between PlayStation and Xbox coming out in 2024. The Duyes boys might have to have a squad on there too and run over everybody. That's going to have to be
the pro-am team going with the jerseys and everything.
Yeah,
I'll do it. I thought I was going to retire. I'll be honest. I've seen a lot of the TikToks where a lot of the older, I hate that says, a lot of the older heads are like retiring from 2K because it got into like the My Park thing and like all stuff like that. And I don't really get into that. I get on and play. And this was like my retirement. Obviously only because Kobe's on the cover. But if we're going to do it, I'll do it. I'll get on my
Vinny plays on PlayStation. Me, Danny are on Xbox. You're on PlayStation. We could have a squad back.
I am also going to
do a legacy leagues, kind of like connected my league. We rebrand everything. Everybody gets their own team. fantasy draft.
So much shit to 9-year-olds across this country. It's not even funny.
Yeah, no, I think so. One of the things that I was going to touch on, Danny, and you bring that up, what's the lowest seed that you could foresee winning a championship this year? And we sound like the biggest jerks saying that it's us, and everyone's like, oh, they only talk about their own team. I challenge somebody else to come up with a better answer for that. I don't really know.
Do we see the Ice Trays winning a championship this year? Realistically, no. If they win the first round, they're going to get bounced in the second round. Air Mambas, probably going to get bounced in the first round. If they do not, they're going to get bounced in the second round. Who does that really leave? Not ball, don't lie. Haven't won a game all year. And once again, not a slight, it happens. They're not going to make it out of the first round. We have the potential to make it out of the first round. And I like our matchup with everyone there ready to go against any team in the league.
Yeah, obviously we're talking about it at full strength because
I'm not saying we're gonna limp in and like we're gonna be missing, like if we're missing Dez, like all right, yeah, we have little to no chance at that point. Obviously, it's a tougher game with just Brian putting the team on his back. I've seen him do it, but it's tough. So full strength, us at the 5 being the lowest seed possible, I think, to do it. So I mean, if people are sick of hearing us talk, facts are facts here. I don't see any of the other 3 teams getting it done. I see the 5th seed. And I would be very honest where, yeah, we have the potential to lose this week. Of course, we haven't played our best basketball. We haven't played like we have the last 2 years where we haven't lost a game. But it happens. You can't win forever. Kind of. So if they think we're being biased, check the numbers, check the facts, check what we're saying, and then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me we're wrong. And I'll listen to your opinion, but I'll probably humbly disagree.
You know, and so what I was going to say is, does this championship experience matter here? And the reason I say no in our game is because, unfortunately, this is the worst possible case scenario. The only person on our team with championship experience on Tuesday, the only person on the court with championship experience on Tuesday is me in winning a championship. I'm the only one
in this league.
Outside of the Lob City game, I'm saying the only person on Tuesday night in the Duyer's Boys and Halfway Crooks matchup that will be in the building on Tuesday is going to be me. You, if you were there as well, would be part of that. Danny would be part of that. But I'm saying
on the talk about Legacy League championships because
correct.
I know my guys have brought them some hardware outside of the league. Right.
No, but I'm saying like Legacy League's champions.
Yeah, you're the
into the
only
gym on Tuesday is only me. Right. So that doesn't really play a role, but you know, I like to think it does. But for a team like Lob City that finds himself in the 3 seed where they're not normally, right? That's why I think everyone's so high.
They took their foot off the gas in the regular season. I think they've learned that they can do that where just like the Golden State Warriors, all right, we're gonna get to the playoffs, we'll turn it on. I think that's kind of what they did this year. So to your question, I think championship experience does matter. But as you get to the later rounds where it gets definitely tougher, we get to those quarters and semis where it's like, all right, we got to dial it in. And we've been here before. I think I said it like the first year we got together is same story, different ending. And that was before we won. So, but kind of got to know what it takes to make a playoff push and win a championship and adopt that mentality. That's why I asked if you're talking about legacy, because if you won a championship anyway, you kind of know what it takes. Right. You got to walk into a game anytime. But I think we'll be all right. We got some guys who have won elsewhere, different levels.
Talking about elsewhere, your boys sitting at 9, including legacy league. So I'm feeling good there. But you know,
there you go,
I'm hitting a shot and hitting one of the King James on Tuesday. I wish Joey was there to see it because I'm planning on hitting one over Joey. But if he's not there, then I might have to do it to Spence.
Is he not gonna be present?
I might have missed that too, but that's what Danny said.
No, I was saying because in the playoffs the rotations shrink down a little bit. Maybe Joey doesn't play as much. He's definitely going to be there.
Joey would not
the whole operation.
I was going to say Joey would miss that for the world. You know, so we'll see how it kind of shakes out. But I think that, you know, of those matchups, I think that one. Well, let's do a little predicting, right? So if every single matchup goes chalk, including the halfway Duyes boys game. Every matchup goes chalk. What do you foresee happening in the second round? So that would leave it at a Rhode Island Warriors halfway matchup and a Lob City Game Breakers matchup in the semifinals.
Let me save a lot of time. Lob wins again. I think their toughest game would be next round. By tough, I mean, like I said, chippy.
No, that's what I'm saying. Second round, they would play the Game Breakers in the semifinals.
Yeah, I think that would be their toughest matchup, and they win that. Off experience, like I said, they've been there. They know what it takes. Everyone's going to show up. And like I said, Lob City isn't the team you really want to talk with. They got some talkers. But they have like the hoopers that can back that up. I think if Game Breakers start to talk, that's where they kind of get out of their rhythm, because then they're more focused on the trash talk than their actual game. But I would think Lob wins that one for that reason. And then it was Warriors halfway. That's a pretty good matchup.
It's
but
a
the
matchup that hasn't happened.
What happened?
And they played in week 1, so it's been a while since they faced each other, and they're two very different teams since that first week.
Yeah, and I think if what you said, if there's trouble in paradise, with there's a lot of mouths to feed and people aren't happy with their minutes or their shots, that kind of plays a role in the Warriors are a good team. I think I've learned that firsthand, where they have someone who can go get you 40, and then they were missing a couple people. I know they have Aunt Jemima, who didn't hit a shot in our game, but he hit a couple shots previously the last couple weeks. So they're a good team. I think they could win, but like I said, they're just going to get fed to Lob, and Lob probably runs it back if it goes as is. Obviously, there's different variables for this week and then the following week, but just kind of got to go with what I know on that one.
Yeah, and then that would leave Lob and the Warriors in the finals. And do you foresee that being another Lob championship if it gets to that point?
The Warriors would have to have, all of them have to have the best game of their Legacy League's career. And from what I've seen from the Warriors, they have 1 to 2 guys that can have a good game a night, but their role players are hot or cold. And that's not a slight, it just happens. I know I'm not going to keep calling him Aunt Jemima, but 8 at number 8. He went 0 for 12 against us. I know one of you said he hit 8 shots last week. So just one of those things, if he can hit 8 out of the 15 shots he probably takes, there you go. And if they're defensively sound, like I've said before, the key to stopping Lob is not playing fast. Warriors play fast basketball. They have that kid Charles Alexander, who can jump from almost a 3-point line, and he floats. His hang time is quite ridiculous. But you don't want to play that game with Lob because they have like 3 or 4 guys that can do that, and they move fast. Then that opens up Cody for 3, Vic for 3. It's just tough to go against what you know after a certain point when all the variables are kind of right in front of you. Like you're saying, if everything goes as is.
Danny, would your outlook on those matchups be any different before we flip the coin and go the other way?
No, I mean, I brought it up. The halfway crooks and the Warriors faced each other in week 1. I think it was the Warriors won, and I think it was like 63-60, if I'm remembering correctly. I know it was like a 1 or 2 possession game. But yeah, they've both changed a lot since that first week. So if they do end up finding each other again in the semifinals, that's going to be a very interesting matchup. I mean, I think they all have at least 3 or 4 guys who are the big players on each team, where it's just going to come down to your supporting cast. And I think we've said it a lot. Halfway is pretty much nothing but supporting cast. So I think that's going to be a really good matchup. And then we've said it before with Game Breakers and Lob. It's their 3rd time meeting each other, should they meet each other in the semis. And I don't like playing Lob in the playoffs. I just, regardless of who you are, how good you are, that's just not a draw you want to get until the last game possible.
And something that you said that I think is interesting. I think halfway might be the only team that I consider to not have. That might be pushing it, but I don't know. Do you consider halfway to be a team that has 2 stars, or do you consider them a Dom Langston show and a bunch of supporting guys?
I don't even know if you'd go as far as say 2 stars or go as far as to say it's no stars. I mean, like
that's my point.
Yeah, I don't think I think there is like a tier 1 and like 1A group of people where it's like these are the guys, like if you have one of these guys on your team, you're all set. I don't think halfway has any of those guys like in the 1A tier. I think they've got a few of like the 1B guys and then a few 2A guys, if you get what I mean.
So who would you say in the league is in that 1A group? Let's put 5 guys in it that you would say you have one of these guys. Not that you're all set, because obviously that doesn't win you games, but
yeah,
those are the top 5 guys, and you need one of those guys. I typically, the teams that have won, I mean, it's Lob and us, but they have a guy that is in those top 5 players in the league, us being Johnny for sure. And Lob being somebody on their team every year is always in the top 5 players in the league, you would probably say. So, who are those top 5 guys that are in the league right now that you would say are somebody to be a cornerstone of a championship team? It can be any 5 guys, it can be 3 people from the same team, doesn't matter. What are your thoughts?
I can get as far as like 4 maybe, because 5 is when you start to get a little wishy-washy.
Sure,
Gian is definitely one of those guys. I think by just pure, like by the numbers, the last couple of years, I think Jose is another one of those guys. Charles Alexander is one of those guys this year. And look, here's the thing. I think Brian and Dez are both guys like that, but I don't know if like people are going to say I'm just being biased and I'm being a homer because the numbers don't really the numbers might not reflect it off the page. But we know the value that those guys can bring to a team. So I'm going to throw them in the mix of the in-between tiers there.
You're not wrong. And of course, bias your own team. I really need people to know Desmond Williams plays basketball just to get out of his house. He does not. And this is no slight. It's one of my best friends. He's not giving 100% here. He is coming to get some cardio in and get a dad break. And anyone who has kids, what I'm talking about, you just need a break from the house. Tuesdays between 7 and 9 is Dez's dad break, where he's coming just to kind of not hear a baby cry and just come and host. If for some reason someone aggravates him and he wants to go give you 100, God bless, you won't score a point and he'll probably put 60 on your head before you can blink. But we're not being homers when we say, and then Brian's a different beast. I've seen it too many times where if he's really giving it, my God. But the numbers this year, they don't jump at you off the page. If you put them in front of me, I didn't know, and there were no names, wouldn't go crazy over them. With that being said, you're absolutely right. Des and Brian are cornerstones of a championship team easily. I'm going to say Vic. I didn't hear you said the first name, Danny, but if you did, I'm sorry. Vic was,
I didn't
okay.
Throw him in it, but yeah, he's a worthy addition.
Vic was in this league when it was the green squad. Winning championships, going undefeated. So Vic and Cody are absolutely 2 cornerstones. Not that I'm going to give you 2 from each team, but those are another 2 guys who definitely come to mind. Gian hasn't won a championship yet, so I can't put him there.
That's fair to say. And just to go to your point,
40 points a game, it's great, but I averaged 2 points a game and I got 1. So what are we talking about? So until he gets one, I can't call him the cornerstone of a team. And this year might be his year, depending on the draw he gets for the rest of the playoffs. But I can't call him a cornerstone to a championship team yet. There's a few guys, like Danny said, 5 is kind of wishy-washy. I've given you 4, and then I can't think of anyone else in the league that I'm forgetting because they don't have the hardware to kind of back an argument. And not, like I said, not that Des and Brian do, but I'm a little more biased outside of them being on the Doogie Boys. I know what they can do on a basketball court. I don't know what any of these other guys can do without just giving 40 points and walking away with maybe a loss in some games. We saw that a lot from Gian last year. Say all the time, ISO ball doesn't win. So yeah, those would be my four: Cody, Vic, Dez, and Bry.
I'll give Gian the credit where it's due for the season he had last year. He set records in scoring, field goals made. I know. I think he's a good thing.
90 points when you're playing 3-on-4 is great. But I mean, nothing to show for it.
I said it multiple times on this podcast this season and last season. If Charles Correa knew that the game was at 7:00 and not at 8:00, maybe he has that ring. But then the other thing I always say is if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. So
I love that one. That's my favorite.
But yeah, I think halfway is mostly full of guys just to get back to like the tier system. I think Dom Langston is another one of those guys where he probably shows less than he has in the tank. And then Jack's guy. What?
Did he win one in Connecticut, by the way? I know he's a Connecticut guy.
I don't know. Well, because I know he played with Joey in Connecticut.
Joey
I don't know if they ended up winning. Because I know Joey never ended up winning a championship. I don't know if he played for a different team that got a ring.
Hate to see it.
But I know he's very skilled. He's very talented.
Yeah, no, he's definitely good. But it's just tough to call someone a championship cornerstone. I feel like I'm the old guy like that sits here and says the 80s and 90s basketball is the greatest. It's without the hardware.
Back when they utilized the bounce pass and the bank shot.
Yeah, when plumbers and electricians were doubling in the league. But yeah, it's tough for me to sit here and say, yeah, these guys are cornerstone. They're cornerstones of teams, but championship teams, I could replace Gian with someone who gives me 20 points a game, and I know they're going to go get me a championship. So it's Johnny and Vinny being perfect. Zach being a perfect example of that. I think Zach maybe get like 15 points a game. But we needed Zach more than like anything. And I think Zach was like the unsung hero of that championship year outside of Vinny, where you need guys like that. And those are cornerstones of championship teams where it's not all about the points. It's not all about what you're seeing in the book. It's about what you're doing all over the game.
Talking about cornerstones, talking about accolades, I think we can close it out. We're not going to give you who we voted for everything, but our ballots have been submitted to Joey for the awards. We can kind of dish it out a little bit of who we think are going to be, because I think it's Joey, the interns, and then us that get votes. So we can throw around some of the names of who we think are going to be the front runners for these awards. And we can, Pete, you want to start with MVP? Give like I think it's a 2-man race, but I want you to give kind of pros and cons for either side of the argument.
I think the interns are going to vote one way. And I think the reality, it should be the other way. And I know he's a great kid. I love him. And I would absolutely take him on my team any day in a heartbeat, but I think the right answer is Gian. Strictly for the fact of they both have one loss. I think the interns are going to vote Charles Alexander, and I think he's going to end up winning. And either one is fine. My soapbox for Gian, though, is that he leads in every other statistical category outside of rebounds, and they're tied in points. Same record. Yeah, he lost that head-to-head matchup. I don't know how much weight that has in an 8-game season. So for me, I that's where I would vote. I'm not saying that I did or I didn't. I know Joey doesn't want us to talk about our picks. That's what makes sense to me. I know that's obviously the conversation, right? Is between between Gian and Charles, right? So
I like it. I like where your head's at.
But that's the conversation, right? Is those two. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I didn't get a vote before anyone like slides in my DMs and starts talking reckless. But I would say Charles, just from what I've seen, without him, that team is like a 1 to 2 win team. If you take Gian away from the game breakers, I still think they probably get like 4 to 5 wins. They have Joe, who can definitely dunk the ball. I haven't really seen much of shooting from him. They have David DePina, who's going to go get like 20, 25 from mid-range. They have Hachi, who we've said who could probably be the 1 or a 2 on a different team.
I think you're selling the rest of that roster a little short, saying that without Gian, they're only a 4 to 5 win team.
Well, there's only 8 games. You have to figure they lose a couple. I'm not going to say Gian is a bum and they win all those games without him. Obviously, there's been games where he goes and gets 40. So let's short him like 2 or 3 games.
I still think that they could be a top 3 seed without Gian, because I think all those other guys on that roster are so good, but their roles are changed.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting here trying to say like they fall from the sky and like they're a mediocre team. I just like, so what do they have? We played 8 games.
7-1.
So yeah, 5-3. I don't think I'm being too unfair there. I just think that obviously Gian is their number 1. Without him, you lose a couple of close ones. They probably would have lost that game against Lob without Gian in the regular season. So yeah, 5-3. I think I'm being pretty fair. And we saw it without Charles. We had the leg up on the Warriors.
No, Charles was there.
No, he came late. He came like after halftime.
He came like before the end of the first quarter.
Did he? I thought it was later. But like even still, like we had the up on them and he came in and that was a whole momentum swing. So that's their guy. And when I think of MVP, I think of the team would be ass without this person.
It's like taking LeBron away from that Cavs team.
Look at when LeBron left Cleveland, I think they were a 19-21 team with Kyrie Irving, a young Kyrie Irving, but like still, that's what I think an MVP is. So I think I'm more than leaning on my vote is Charles. If I had one, I think he's a hell of a ball player. He gets it done on the offensive side of the court. And like I said, if you take Gian away from the game breakers, they're still that middle of the pack team for sure. I can't say the same about the Warriors without Charles. And that's not a slight at any of those guys. I like their game.
I think that's spot on though. I think that's spot on though.
Sure.
I think Gian needs to, prove if he takes some slight to the evaluation of the rest of his roster, I think he should prove it, sit a few games out of the playoffs and see how they do.
When this drops, I know Gian's either going to like get at me on Instagram or something, and he's going to have it's all love. I got a lot of love for everyone in the league. Me and Gian go back and forth a couple times throughout the season where we talk, we banter. I'm sure he's going to have some stuff to say about a lot of the stuff I said today. And it's no disrespect to him. It's just what I see as like someone with what I think is a very good basketball IQ. Not to disrespect him. I just think it's what I said is very valid today. And to Danny's point, yeah, if he thinks those guys are what he thinks they are and what they seem to be, sit out round 1.
Let Addison Ray take the helm.
All right. Any other awards you want to forecast?
Yes. I think the only other tight race, there's another a race that I think is very tight, could go either way. And then there's a race that I think that there's an underdog that could potentially win the award. Both of these we're going to look like assholes for picking. So be forewarned. Most improved player of the year, I think, is the second closest race though for an award this year. Offensive player of the year, I think whoever doesn't win MVP is going to win that award, as they should.
They're separated in total points by literally 1 point after the regular season. So yeah,
wait, it should be like whoever doesn't win most improved is going to win offensive player.
No, whoever doesn't win MVP.
Oh, okay.
Should win OPOY, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it doesn't race. Rookie of the year, I think head and shoulders probably should be Addison Ray, should be Joe Secatore. I'm just gonna keep throwing shade because it's fun. It's our last week, but I think he's pretty hands down rookie of the year. I don't foresee anybody else jumping him unless they want to double up and give Charles rookie of the year too, which they could. But saying that there's no duplicates, right? I think he probably wins rookie of the year. The only way I foresee him not winning is if Joey wants to give double awards, which he typically doesn't do, and give Charles either MVP or OPOY and then Rookie of the Year.
This award obviously isn't in contention. I think we all know who's going to win it. But if the rule wasn't you have to play this amount of games to get qualified, the DPOY is something we'd be talking about right now, because there's someone.
Well, that's one of the ones I wanted to talk
about. I didn't know, like, if you, because we couldn't, obviously it's not a thing. Not to steal your thunder, but you have Dez, who I don't have the numbers in front of me, who I think played 4 games.
He played 4, and you have 5 to be eligible for an award.
So as stupid as a rule I may think that is, that's like the NBA playing. You got to play minimum 65 to get all NBA titles. You have Dez, who had definitely DPOY numbers in 4 games.
In blocks and steals.
Yeah.
He was third in the league in blocks per game at 2.0. He was first in the league in steals per game at 2.8. He is one of, let me get the numbers here for that. I believe he is the only player. Yeah, he is the only player to average what?
This is why it's dumb that he's not eligible, because
he's the only player to average 2 or more blocks and steals.
Ever?
Never did that?
No. Currently in the league.
I feel like Brian has some. But yeah, and I like to touch on what PJ said. It's definitely dumb with someone with those numbers who shows up that many times can still. And I don't think the number's lower if he shows up 4 more.
No,
games.
I think they go up because he's probably.
By the way, I think he averages probably 5 blocks a game. There's definitely one of those games where he probably swats everything, and he would steal a lot more. So I think the numbers aren't really skewed in his favor with 4 games. I think it's kind of securing Jeff as a DPOY and doing him a favor that he wasn't at every game.
So funny you say that, because Dez wasn't the person, because he's ineligible for the award. He wasn't even the person that Danny and I were going to say would be in the contention.
Oh, I'm just being biased then.
So it's the NBA syndrome the legacy leagues has, right? Where a big guy will win every year because they lead the league in blocks. So Jeff is going to be who wins the award. That's what the Inters are going to pick. So without Dez in contention, who, if he played 1 more game, would absolutely get the vote, I think, or should. There's actually somebody else who is, so Dez is first in the league in steals per game, and there's a guard who's second in the league in steals per game, who does qualify, but he averages 1 block a game as a guard, but he's second in the league in steals per game, who is also on the Duyer's boys.
I'm going to say, does he wear red? Because I know exactly, I think I know where this is going.
Who?
Is he from Colombia?
He's the Colombian jumping bean.
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me.
The Duyer's boys have the number 1 and number 2 leaders in steals per game, and they're Dez and Brian. And I don't know if a guard will ever win the Defensive Player of the Year award, because everyone.
You did it. You said it, and now he's going to win it next year. Thank you. You said it. There you go. It's your fault for what he does next year now.
But that's my point. It was like, no, like when Marcus Smart was the first guard to win it since Gary Payton. It was like there's definitely been guards that have been very, like the Avery Bradleys and the Tony Allens and those guys. Like those guys are very deserving, but everyone, gawks at the blocks per game. But that's why I think Dez would have been the perfect person, because he leads in steals and he's also top 3 in blocks per game. But since he's not eligible, I think if you want to go in the guard direction, you can't go wrong voting for a Brian, for the sheer fact of he's leading the league in steals per game. Is that not just as much of a Defensive Player of the Year worthy as leading the league in blocks per game? And that would be my argument.
I absolutely agree with you. I think, like you said, it's NBA syndrome. And I just like the interns have gotten so much better. I cannot praise and they should get the most improved player award, by the way. They are so much better than.
That's very true.
I I think the only thing we need to get away from, and this was my beef like 2 years ago, it's where you got to realize what guys do to other teams' best scores. I'll always hold this over Danny's head where he had Devon Pena as MVP early, averaging like 30 a game. And then he came to my office and got like 13. And that's just one of those things you have to look at what someone does to like the best scorer of a team. If someone can minimize what like a 30-point per game player does consistently, because that was the year I did it to Devin, I did it to Colin Burns. I shut down a lot of guys who were getting 30. They got half of that. So they got to start looking at guys who alter their game defensively, where they change the whole game plan. It's not just about blocks. And I say this every time I get into a conversation about basketball or sports in general. It's, you got to look at it, the off the book stuff, where it's not just about the numbers. Sometimes you have Draymond Green, perfect example. They call him Mr. Single Double or Single Triple, like whatever it is. But the stuff he does off the books, it gets him a DPOY almost, or in the conversation every year. They got to start looking at that stuff where it's like, all right, this person uniquely changes the game. And it's not just with blocks at the rim. It's them talking. It's them smothering the ball. It's their on-ball defense where they can't get by the guy. It's, so you're not wrong with saying Bryant should be in contention. I don't think he'll get a look because he's a guard and because it's not loud. What happened?
I said, I don't think he'll get a look outside of the three of us.
Yeah. And it's just, it's because he's a guard and it's because it's not loud. It's, Brian, like you said, averages 1 block a game, 2 steals. And if you get by Brian, that's where he's getting his block, by the way. He's whacking it before because you think you got by him. I think I know his game pretty well, where he's on you like a fly on shit. You're not getting away from him for too long, where he's not going to either recover, steal the ball, or block it. But this is where people are going to say, I'm biased, we're biased. And to that, I say, once again, prove me wrong. Look at the numbers, look at the facts. If I'm being biased, call me out on it. But I have a feeling I'm not. So, yeah.
It's a situation where I really wish, and I talked to Joey about this. I asked him if the stat tracking software that he uses keeps track of minutes played. Because one thing that I really wanted to do was calculate player efficiency ratings. And one thing you need, I would like, so I can get I have the raw numbers with the formula where you like add points for good things, subtract it from bad things. But the one thing you need to really normalize it is minutes played, because it's all a factor of how often you're on the court. So it skews it if you have a lot of good things, but you play a lot of minutes. If you have a lot of bad things, yada, yada, yada. It would really be eye-opening if we could get minutes played data or like possession data, so we can like really crunch the numbers on like who actually is performing the best in certain matchups or in certain situations. But the rebuttal that Joey gave to me is that Shaine is always mad about the interns missing a couple of blocks at the end of the game.
Them missing a couple blocks robbed me of the block record. That's why I'm so mad about it. I had 10 blocks in one game. They gave me 7.
I was mad about it too a couple times. There were a few games in like the winter season 3 or 4 years ago where I thought I had like 6 or 7 assists. I was flashing the leather and I only ended up with like 2 or 3. So, I mean, everybody's got their qualms, and he was like, yeah, he's like, everybody comes to me every week and they're like, the interns missed this, the interns missed that. He's like, do you really want me to have them keep track of minutes played too? I love the interns to death, but it would be a big ask.
Like I said, shout out to them this year, between the photos, the videos. I haven't heard a lot of complaints this year of them like botching a lot of stats. I haven't been
great.
So, I mean, maybe
I love the inside the play segment that
they're doing. Like I said, shout out to them. Like most improved, they should be in the conversation. But if this is a crew he can hang on to, see if we can do it. If these guys like it and they think it's entertaining enough, and I can't see the problem with this crew of interns doing the minute logging, because I think that argument would shut a lot of people up. A lot of the people who say, "Oh, 2 points," it's like my 2 points is probably a lot stronger than the 20 you're given.
Yeah, and I think the last one that's my dog picked up something that she shouldn't. The last one that's important, I think is the second closest race outside of MVP is most improved. And again, I think it's somebody that's not going to get a look. But Danny, I really want you to pull up the numbers for this, because Mario Valerio is probably the one that's going to get the award. What were his numbers? Let's talk about him first. What were his numbers jumped up from his last season? Because he didn't play last year, but the last season he played, what did they jump from? And then we'll get to the other guy who, again, we're going to be the jerks, and you can take it out on us.
I'm not going to say anything, but while Danny pulls his number up, I do think Mario deserves it.
Yes.
But who we're also going to talk about, I think obviously made great improvement, but just the room of improvement for Mario was a little bigger compared to the second option that we're going to talk about. So so before anyone thinks we're biased, I think this is Mario's to win for sure.
So starting off, which this is something I want to check with Joey on, and this is not to make a case for the guy that
I know exactly what you're going to say, because
you
he
know
didn't
exactly
play
what I'm going to say.
Oh,
he didn't play last season. You're going to say
No, not that. Because I asked him about that already. And I said, is the fact that he took a few years off make him ineligible? And Joey said, no, just as long as it's improvement from their last season played. So that's fine. I get that it could be an asterisk next to it because it's been 4 years since he's been in the league.
I mean, he put up 75% of his total points this year.
Exactly. The
Yeah,
caveat I want to make, which could shake things up, Joey likes to set the awards as must have played 5 games. In summer 2019, he only played 4 games. Are you going to knock him down a peg because both seasons are not award qualifying seasons?
Wow.
I did not realize that. That's a
Joey,
I didn't realize
you're in trouble, buddy.
But regardless, let's look at the numbers. He jumped up from about 16 points per game to.
That is a very important piece, though. If that makes him
Yeah.
ineligible, then I understand as well.
He jumped up 6% in the field goal percentage. It hurts him a little bit because he shot 19% from 3 in his rookie season. I think he had a couple cold games to end the season because I think at the halfway mark, he was closer to 36% from 3. So he really had a little cold stretch that really kind of brought the numbers down. It's still an improvement. And obviously, I mean, free throw shooting, he shot a lot more. So obviously that's an improvement too. But I mean, 29% from 3 at the end of the day is not fantastic, but I'm trying to see right now because it looks like he went up in every statistical category that is recorded. And yeah, he did. So
the only thing from stopping him winning that would be because he was and we had more games than 8 games last year. So it was
19 was the year that there were 14 teams. So
yeah, so
they were, I think, 9 weeks in the regular season.
No, didn't you not play everybody? I think
No,
it was 9 or 10.
With you, and we faced them in the final. First time we ever played them.
Yeah, so if that makes him honestly, the fact that he didn't even he wouldn't have played the qualifying amount of games regardless. Does that discredit? That season. Does that discredit him from being able to win the award? Because that makes a big difference. If he only played 3 games and had really bad 3 games, and now all of a sudden he's playing the full season, what does that do those numbers really make sense to include from the season that he wasn't even eligible to be? He wouldn't have even been eligible to win rookie of the year.
No. Any other guy, just to get away from bias, we're not going to tell you who it is. I've cut off his identifying information. I'm going to share my screen now so we can look at this person's numbers.
I mean, they're going to know. They're going to know. We already said we're going to be biased about it. We're trying not to.
This person from last year played 9 games, started 1. This year, their share of the load increased, went from 8, starting 5 games. Jumped up by 8 points per game, which I believe that's more of a jump than Mario made. He went from 16 to 23. This person went from 4 to 12. shot the exact same percent from the field relatively, but increased his 3-point percentage by 11. Actually shot free throws this year, averaging 2.5 more rebounds, averaging almost 2 more assists, went up in every major statistical category as well. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Screen is no longer shared. But do you think that's a person that contends? Because obviously it's a little bit more of a recency thing where their last season was last season and not 4 years ago.
And they would have been eligible for an award last in the season that you're saying that they improved from.
Exactly.
I mean, I think so. And people are going to go look at the numbers from what we're saying, and they're going to know it's someone.
It's Wolfie for anybody that's wondering.
It's Kyle Wolf.
I can't hold it.
I know, and we're sick of people saying we're biased, but like numbers are numbers. Numbers don't lie. First of all, shout out Kyle Wolf. Once again, I knew he had this in him. He just didn't really have the chance to put it into effect last year. I think this year, obviously, he did. His numbers jumped up, and the impressive part is he shot as well as he did last year. So that didn't change. With more,
so theoretically, he could have done this last year with the same workload.
Yeah, but there was just no room for it. Obviously, if you look at the difference in teams, I think we needed this from Kyle Wolf. And I think that kind of helps us in the future, knowing what Kyle brings to the table. So I think it's not it's not a ridiculous thing to say he should get a look. Yeah, I didn't know that Mario hasn't played in 4 years and didn't qualify in 2019. That kind of changes my opinion on the whole thing.
And you know what? I'll say it like Joey said on the post game. These are regular season awards. I believe in the email he sent out with the ballot, he asked them all the interns to bring their filled ballots with them to week 8. So according to my knowledge, the votes are in and they've been collected. They haven't been tallied. We don't know who's won.
So it doesn't matter what we say. So
Yeah,
Kyle,
I don't think if we're saying this, I don't think it sways the vote because I think the votes are already in, but he just hasn't looked at them yet.
I think just with the players of the week that Mario won, obviously people see that, and then I mean they don't know that he didn't, or they have to know he didn't play last year. So how do you win most improved? So unless Joey was dropping hints like, oh, Mario played then to the interns, I guess it's different. But like if I'm an intern and I assume Mario didn't play last year, how does he win most improved?
That's true.
When I didn't know the league history as well as I did the first year that we got ballot votes, it was literally a matter of go through the stats page on the website, every player, click on their page, see what they did last year. That's how I operated before I knew everything.
If they operated like that, Mario is not in the conversation. If you're a normal thinking person, maybe Joey changed it and he kind of laid the guideline and said, hey, here's what everyone did. Here's where they are, yada, yada, yada. I mean, so I could now see where Kyle probably does win, or maybe does win, because Mario didn't play last year. And if you just see that, he can't win it. And then there's no one else that really jumps out at me.
The only one would be Spence, maybe, but I don't think he had as much of a statistical
I think
improvement.
he played better
Carl
to the
Lee is another guy who
not
jumps
statistically. Who?
Carl Lee from Lob. He jumped out at me too, but I need to check. I don't know if he played enough games.
I'm damn sure about Carl Lee. He jumps at everything.
Yeah, actually, summer 2022, he played in 7 games, but actually because of the injury, he didn't play in 5 games this year, so he wouldn't be eligible. But he actually went from 6.5 points per game to 21 points per game.
But that's the thing. He filled in a lot. A lot of Lob didn't show up this year, so he was just the guy for them to go get the points.
Exactly. I said it to Joey before weeks ago. So before we didn't know that he didn't play 5 games, I said to Joey where I was like, technically, statistically, Carl Lee jumped the most, but like we know what kind of a player he is. Last year when he was averaging 6 points per game, we know it's not like skill improvement. We know it's minutes improvement.
Yeah.
Would Carl Lee have even qualified last year though? I don't even remember him going to that many games.
He played in 7 games last year.
So,
Really?
but yeah, I mean, with all that knowledge, I think, and like I said, like we've said, the votes are in, so this weighs nothing. I now think this would be Kyle Wolf's award to lose with all this new knowledge of Mario not playing since 2019. Technically, probably can't win a most improved, even if by games played in 2019. And I can't think of anyone else. Obviously, Carl Lee being the outlier, but I think that was just like a minutes thing. I personally know what Carl Lee could do as a basketball player. It's scary how high he can jump at that build. It doesn't really make sense to my head. So there's no one else. Maybe David DePina. I'm not sure of his numbers. I know.
I would imagine he took a dip in the numbers this year because when he played for
He was
Bogey,
the guy last
their only option, and now he moved to the Game Breakers where he's
a fourth
So,
option.
yeah. And like I said, Spencer is more to the eye he improved than statistically. So yeah, I now have to say this is Kyle Wolf's to lose. But it's
looking at it now,
probably-
David DePina went down in points per game and rebounds per game and assists per game.
I didn't
But
think he was that.
up in his efficiencies. He improved from the field, he improved from three, and he improved from the free throw line.
See, I didn't think he was with Devin Devon Pina. He was with Taj that year, right?
No.
Who was he with?
No. DePina?
Yeah, who did he play with?
David DePina or Devin Pina?
David, whoever's on
David,
Game Breaker.
he was with the Bogey Kicks.
Bogey Kicks.
Ah, that's right. Now it's all coming back to me. Got
So
it.
his stats went down because, I mean, going from being the number one option on Bogey Kicks to being the number 4 option on the Game Breakers is definitely gonna drop your stats a little bit. But I mean, still, you put an asterisk next
Shout out
to
to
it.
Bogey Kicks. I hope they're doing well. But yeah, got to give it to Kyle Wolf now. If we're playing it by Joey's rules.
Okay. Well, you
Joey
know,
doesn't-
yeah, I know. Joey, we
Up on the fly.
are fun. What I'm gonna do before next week, I'll make sure I actually send them out this time, is I will get the spreads for the playoffs because it's the most wonderful time of the year in Legacy Leagues basketball. The other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comb through my spreadsheet of the records, make sure everything is all squared away on that, and there's no new records that need to be put, or hope that there are some new records that need to be put in. But now it's, everyone's 0-0. It's a new slate. You have effectively your 8 new teams. So I'm excited to see what happens.
It'll be a good playoffs.
Anything else they want to add?
What was that?
I said, anybody else want to add anything about the week coming forward?
I'm very excited to see all these matchups. I hope I'm wrong about a couple of them. I hope to see some red in 2 weeks in person. That's all I'm really going to say on that one. I got to talk to Joey on the side, maybe slide him at 20. Actually, I do have to slide Joey at 20. So Joey, when you do listen to this, I didn't forget about the tech fee. I'll be back with that crisp 20. Unless you want to double it, I'll do the charity thing again. But we got some stuff to talk about.
All right, Pete, why don't you send us home?
Stevie and I are going to sign you off for the podcast this week. It's been great to be back. We'll have a recap of the games next week and we'll do some more podcasts, some more playoff stuff for you. But that's going to do it for me, for Shaine Patrick, and for the foot doctor, the foot guy, Daniel Joseph Ruggiero. So, Danny, why don't you leave us with one of your famous quotes before we let these guys go?
I was trying to think of one this entire time. And I think an hour ago, I had one in my head, but we've gotten so away from that. We've gotten so sidetracked that it slipped my mind, So,
Danny, the people are waiting on it, man.
Is it another Taylor Swift quote like the last podcast?
Yeah, whatever.
no, hey, don't doubt me on that. That album was
Who
good.
gets a
Actually,
mulligan?
for the original. You give me a mulligan for that? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
See you next week. I don't know. I'll come back with a good one next week. Okay.
Danny.
This is like your whole point of being on the podcast.
What that? It says that speaker changed to my AirPods. My AirPods aren't even in this house.
Oh, shit. All right. I can still hear you. We're waiting on a quote. We're not ending this, so you give us a
We're
quote.
not
So
ending
look
it,
something
it's
up or use that brain. Use that doctor brain. Not a doctor yet.
Not a doctor yet. That's why I can't think of anything right now. But you know
We're-
what? The Dudes boys have red in their ledger and they're coming for blood. So we'll see you on Tuesday night.
Love
See,
it.
that's so hard.
That works.